dog, when it comes up to you, it wants to be petted. A dog will walk away if it doesn't want to be petted. Same thing with any animal. So it's about living your life through consent and respecting the dignity of the individual and the dignity of their pain and their suffering. Not saying when I don't have to I won't do it because I don't want to harm another being unnecessarily.
So it's about harm and consent.
Generally, yeah. So it's about reducing the sort of impact you have on another being. You know?
So would you eat fish from the sea which is dead?
No, so again, it's obviously a fish has had to die, and fish is still pain.
No, a dead fish. Right? Would you eat a dead fish?
If it was killed.
No, killed. In the sea, so sometimes you see a lot of fishes are already dead and they rise up.
I mean, generally, I think if an animal dies without something like killing it'll be like diseased or something. Generally, I mean, I wouldn't do it anyway because I sort of think it's gross. But you know, there's a lot of cameras. But yeah.
You know what you said? This is what happens.
Speaker's caught, he says. Did he say you would eat fish or you?
No, I wouldn't. No. So I wouldn't eat any sort of animals.
Are you a vegan, right?
Yeah, I'm vegan.
Do you mind me answering? Is it based on sentience? Stay in. Is it sentience?
Yeah, so it revolves around the idea of consent. So animals don't consent to being exploited, and it's pretty evident if you look for it. So a dog, it wants to be patted, a dog will come up to you and you're patting it. As soon as it doesn't want to be patted anymore, it will walk away. No animal puts its neck on a chopping block. No animal. To keep a farm animal, you have to put a fence up or it run away. All of these things. No animal wants to be consumed. No animal wants to be killed. And the beauty is, in today's day and world, we don't have to eat animals. We don't have to exploit an animal. We don't have to cause any suffering to another being. And I think whether you eat meat or not, it is obvious you're harming an animal. You're killing a sentient being, and that is painful. Whether you think you are allowed to do that because of the food chain, or
if it's not sentient, is that okay?
If it's not sentient and it can't feel pain, and it's not a subject, it doesn't have a subjective experience, then it would be okay.
See, this is what I find strange. So if you don't mind, Brother Mansur, you can eat plants because they're not sentient. Is that right?
Sentient, they can't feel pain.
So you're vegan, right? Do you eat eggs?
No, I won't eat anything to do with an animal.
But do you see my point? Sentience. You said if it's sentience, egg is not sentient, right?
But it's come from a chicken that is sentient.
Oh, so it's different. So it's also an egg. So if it's not, so it goes beyond sentience.
Well, no, because it involves the hen. So in the egg industry, obviously in the egg industry, only female chickens are valuable. So all male chickens are useless. And because they're a different type of breed to the meat chicken, as soon as the male chick are born, within 24 hours they'll be either macerated or gassed. So by buying an egg, you're financing an industry.
So you're going down the route.
You're still killing animals because you're killing the male chicks.
I see.
And then obviously hens in the egg industry, whether it's free range, whether it's caged hens, whatever sort of hen it is, organic, they will only live for 18 months, and then after that, they cannot lay enough eggs to be profitable, and therefore they will be killed. And then
I'll finish on this because I'll hand back to Brother Mansur.
No, carry on.
But then it seems to be, this is what I always end up at, it seems to be the capitalist system that is the real major issue, and not actually just an egg and a chicken laying it. For example, if you go to other countries, I'll just finish. Just on other countries, there's chickens laying eggs perfectly naturally, and so there would be no issue in eating that.
I would generally disagree with that. I think you can have ethical capitalism. The concept of capitalism is the ownership of property in the private sector. So it's me as an individual being able to own my own things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that you don't think
capitalism is the problem with the chickens?
I don't think
the number of chickens getting slaughtered.
I think it's the idea that we don't respect the individual. We don't respect another person's right not to be hurt. We don't respect their rights not to suffer.
Sure. Because a minute ago, I understand. A minute ago, you mentioned the system of how the female chickens are being killed in the male. Because that seems to be involved in the capitalism and not actually the natural way in which an egg is made and then given to a human to eat. Yeah, you get my point, because you mentioned the system a minute ago.
But I don't think...
Well, in that scenario
anyway.
There's
no natural way of getting an egg. Unless you walk around and
a chicken lays an egg.
And
eat it.
So modern
They're
chickens...
No, my point anyway, sorry, I don't want to take over my brother Mansur's conversation. However, my main point was this, and that is that the system you mentioned a minute ago is capitalistic system, about breeding too many females and killing off the men. That's a fact of the matter. Yeah. That's not happening in farms in other countries. There's other countries,
I would
for example, a village, hold on a second, a village in Africa who has some chickens and they're just laying eggs, and the person is taking what he needs, is using it, then by your own admission, you technically wouldn't have a problem with that.
I would generally have less of an issue with that. If someone needs to eat an egg to survive, and that's their only option, then I don't have an issue with that.
Okay. I'll hand back to Brother.
That's right. So you are very much for ethical farming.
I don't think there's any ethical farming as in like plants, yeah, like agricultural sort of growing plants to consume, because plants aren't sentient, they can't feel pain.
That's not true.
So,
what is pain to you?
So pain, so you need a nervous system. So you need a system.
For pain you need a nervous system? Are you sure about that?
You need a system to relay a stimuli. So if I touch something, I have nerves, and that's a system that tells my body that I feel.
Why would pain be only involved with, a living system with a nervous system? Are you saying other living systems don't experience pain because they don't have a nervous system?
No, so a sponge is an animal. Biologically, it is a definition of an animal. It doesn't have a nervous system.
What happens when we feel pain? What happens to us?
So what happens is, if I cut my hand, my nerves in my hand would relay that along a nervous system, an electrical impulse that is a discomfort. It gives me a negative stimuli. And it makes sense, because as a being, I can walk away from something that's negative. I can remove myself from a situation that's causing me harm, yeah? As a being, I can walk away from a negative situation. A plant evolutionary cannot walk away from something. A plant has to stay where it is because it's root. It cannot move away. So evolutionary, it makes no sense for a plant to feel pain, because if it did, it would be under torture if it was and it would never be able to remove itself from pain. That's why we developed a nervous system.
Remember what you said, a negative stimuli. When a stimulus is provided, and that living system reacts to it because it's discomforting, that's pain, isn't it?
So it can react to something but not feel discomfort.
Do you know when a caterpillar eats the leaf of a tree, what kind of reaction the whole tree
so tree
goes
can react,
through?
That's true.
No,
so
what is the tree reacting to and why?
So if I cut the branch of a tree, the tree will react and it will grow back that branch. It may grow back more than one branch as a reaction.
When
it can't feel that. It doesn't.
Branch is cut off. Why is the tree reacting? Is it feeling something? Is it experiencing something?
It can. I would argue it doesn't experience.
So if it doesn't,
remember,
this is a logical fallacy on its own. In a way, we experience. We are not same as a tree, and tree is not same as a dog.
That's correct.
Every living system, they may have differences in their makeup.
Yeah.
So, does a tree experience when a branch is cut off? Something.
There'll be some experience, but it doesn't have a negative system. It doesn't have a system where if I touch a tree, it doesn't relay to a central system. There is no central nervous system. There is no system inbuilt in it.
Another problem.
Have a negative
you keep talking about nervous system. Nervous system is for animals, right? That's the system
that's correct.
Right.
That's why we feel pain.
So in other living systems, you can't say nervous system. They have a system in which they respond to stimuli, in which they experience something. For example, as I mentioned here, you should have seen it already. This is when a caterpillar starts eating a leaf. What happens to the rest of the leaf? How do they feel? How do they experience? How do they react?
Well,
most importantly,
brain, it's a leaf.
Sorry?
It's a leaf. It's a leaf. Like it's not got a brain. It's not got. There's no way a leaf knows what's
going
on.
So that really shows. You haven't studied as much in depth as it should be. If you made your whole life way of living,
okay, well, I'll
because
give you an example.
Before you give an example, because of suffering and consent, look, we know plants can suffer, but in their own way. Secondly, we know plants.
Disagree with that.
It's not point of disagreeing.
But it is
suffering is in what way? Because if you equate suffering as a human suffering, then you're already making a logical fallacy here. Because they're not human. Makeup is different. They react and they do experience, right? There's a lot. Have you heard of plant neurobiology?
I have. I recognise that plants. There is a system involved in the plant growing, yeah. And if I chopped off a branch, the tree will grow back that branch. I recognise that. But the reason we feel pain and the reason we have negative stimuli is because we can walk away from that. We have a brain. We can.
Sorry, I didn't get the answer to my question. Have you heard of this new area of science called plant neurobiology.
I guess. Well, I wouldn't say they exist, but go on.
No, this is your own, what I would say, bias against the plants because you eat them quite comfortably. And that's why you have this bias, and perhaps you don't want to know. There's a whole discipline now called plant neurobiology involving prominent scientists who study botany, who study plants, right? They think just because they don't have a nervous system like our own, it doesn't mean they can also experience and react and also feel pain.
But they don't have a nervous system. They don't have something similar to a nervous system. There is no system that they have. There is no.
I would suggest, rather than giving you links now, go and research about this and see how do the plants first of all react when a caterpillar comes and eats its trees. We have seen this, how the reaction spreads. It warns the other leaves that there's an impediment, there's already an impending danger. A caterpillar has started to eat part of the plant, the leaves, so that it can then respond. There are many plants who respond if you touch, it closes the defense system. There are many plants like that. It's very sensory. They have sensory systems. How would they? I don't even know the names at the very minute. I know the name in my language. If you touch them, it's like all shuts down. All the leaves, everything, they collapse together.
Okay.
Did they sense anything? Do they have a sensory system?
There is a reaction there. Can I?
Sorry. My question is very specific. No. Specific question requires specific answers. Do they have a sensory system which activated itself to make that response?
I don't think there is not in the same set. That system is not the same.
Do not
Right,
say
okay.
same system as a human or a dog.
If we accept that you are right and I'm wrong.
No, that's not the question.
Hang on a minute. If we accept that,
I would like to continue only on this condition that you and we respond to each other's questions straightforward.
I've responded to your question.
So, do they have a?
Now I'm saying, given that you're correct, say
No, don't say correct.
Because right now I don't have the right now in this
I
conversation.
would like you to answer it first. Do you consider that they have a sensory system which got activated?
I wouldn't say there's a. I would not say there's a sensory system. There is a reaction.
Okay, I want to know why.
There is a reaction.
When, for example, when you see that plant, you stay there, nothing will happen. The moment you touch it, it reacts. So, did your touch start a series of?
It created a reaction.
Based on what? Senses or not?
No, it doesn't have to. It's not a sense. Not in the same thing. But,
No, sorry.
I disagree. I mean, you're asking the same
I want to know what you mean by. I want to know what you mean by disagree.
Hang on a minute. You
When
don't like the answer I'm giving you.
Look. When you touch the leaf, is touch part of our sensory system?
It is, but in a different way.
Was touch a part of their sensory system?
Okay. It's not a sensory system. It is a reaction. It is different. But can we just
reacting to what?
Okay. If given, say that plants feel pain in the same way that.
No, not given. We can establish that rather than.
If we establish that and we agree that plants feel pain, okay. If we take that position.
Why do you eat it then?
What we do know is that there is less plants consumed on a vegan diet than there is on a meat-eating diet. Because it is, when you consume calories, when you eat, you don't just balloon in size, do you? Because a lot of your calories you consume...
I'm a bit lost in the initial reasons why you became a vegan. There was issues of consent. The issues of consent.
You consume less plants, so you contribute to less suffering. So even if plants feel pain, which I would argue they do not, but if they do, you would eat less plants, and therefore you would cause less suffering.
So we can eat less meat. I agree with you there.
Would you not
eat
want
less
to
meat?
reduce the suffering in this world?
Yes. So eat less meat.
Agree with that.
Eat
and
less
the way
meat.
to reduce suffering in this world is by being
ethical
vegan.
farming. Eat less meat.
I
agree with you. So really, you're not really a vegan. You're thinking like a Muslim at this minute. I'll tell you why. A Muslim doesn't want unwanted suffering to any living thing. When we consume meat, do you know how we make it permissible to us? We can't just, kill a chicken or kill a cow or something to eat, for example. This life, we have to take it with the permission of God, only for the consumption of eating it.
You don't have to eat it.
For playing games that people play, like the English tradition of foxes and rabbits or hares, right? It will be totally disallowed and not allowed in Islam, because you are killing an animal for fun. In Islam, do you know how?
Why do you eat meat? Why do you eat meat?
I'll tell you why. Why does a lion eat a deer?
You're not a lion. I'm asking you.
No, I will tell you, just to give you the picture of the natural world.
But you're not in the natural world.
But
you're not in the natural world.
Am I not part of the natural world?
This is not natural.
Wait. Am I living in an artificial world, or am I part of a natural world?
You're not running around naked, are you? You're not living in the natural world. You're living in a society with rules and concepts. The natural world is, if I'm bigger, I have the rights. That is might is right in the natural world. That is not the case in this world. There are laws. There are judgments. You cannot take from another. There are dignities. There are respect. You are given rights.
Yes.
That is not natural.
Right.
That is not the way animals live. That is not the way beings without moral ability live. Okay. But what I'm saying is, would you not want to reduce the suffering? Yes,
Didn't I tell you already?
Therefore, you should go vegan.
I told you already. You are speaking like a Muslim in the sense that there should be minimum suffering for
that's beautiful,
all living
Let me agree.
creatures.
Let me agree.
Yes, we
Let me
do.
agree.
So you don't have to be a vegan. What you need to be, become a Muslim. And when you become a Muslim, I'll tell you, once you become a
I
Muslim,
would disagree with that, but go on.
when you say you disagree, this whole world, right?
Yeah.
You need to really understand your position in this world too, not in relation to animals only, right?
Yeah.
Do you believe this world is a product of a creator?
No.
Right.
I don't believe in
So
God.
basically, your ideological stance has made you to think and accept veganism.
I believe in evidence-based decision making.
Very good. I believe in that too.
I knew you were going to say
Right. What are the evidence that this universe came from nothing? Is there
that.
any
The universe
evidence?
didn't come from nothing.
So the universe,
No one has ever said the universe comes from nothing.
a lot of people say that.
No, they don't. So
Have
they
you read
say
the book?
it comes from a very dense piece.
Okay, so why
Then it
would
expands very, very quickly, and the universe we are in is expanding.
you know what? I agree with you. Then why would world famous scientists and physicists like Professor Lawrence Krauss write a book called The Universe from Nothing and sell it and become the bestseller? And his fans digest it and they believe the universe came from nothing.
But they may do that, but I don't believe that.
Right.
I would say the general
Right.
scientific community does not say the universe comes from nothing.
Right.
There is not that consensus.
So
is
is
not
the-
case.
so is the universe-
consensus is it comes from a very dense piece of matter, etc. It was very dense, and then something we don't know what it was. There is no consensus on that. It expanded extremely quickly, and now that is the universe we're living in, and it is expanding. And there's
How
evidence to
old
suggest
is
that
our universe according to science?
it is
roughly?
billions or trillions of
Roughly.
years old.
About 13.67 billion years, right?
It's extremely old.
Right. So 13.6, say 14, round number.
Yeah.
14 billion years is nothing compared to eternal universe. If a universe is eternal,
Agreed.
it's more than trillions and trillions of years.
But
not
they
just
don't say the
billions.
universe is that. They're not saying it's that old.
What are
they're
they
saying
saying?
since the start of the Big Bang. That is the period of time since the start of the Big Bang. They're not saying.
They
that
said
it's-
this is the.
There is the concept is it is eternal.
No, their concept is
The concept is
our
eternal.
universe.
But here's the thing, right?
Our
There could
universe is only 13.7
Okay.
billion years old. That means there was no before that.
Be, okay.
So,
Well, I
universe.
disagree with that, but.
You disagree with
but
the.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing.
On what
logically,
evidence do you disagree with these
Hang on.
scientists?
Logically, God can exist and the Big Bang can exist as one. You can believe in a God and you can believe in the Big Bang. You can say that the way that the religious texts speak are descriptive and they're not literal and they're describing that process. You can argue that. But what I would say is I don't see any evidence for God. I don't see any evidence for God, and I don't see any evidence for there not being God. I can't prove a negative. And you're asking me to prove a negative, and that's not physically possible.
Yeah,
I
it
cannot
is.
prove that doesn't exist.
Of course, we prove negative all the time.
What I can do is prove that a particular type of God exists. But I do not fully understand.
Okay, let's go through these
Islam, and I
one
don't
by
fully
one.
understand. So I wouldn't be able to prove to you
Okay.
that Islamic God doesn't exist. I agree with you, but I would say
Do you know
in my
that we
day-to-day
can
life, I
prove
see
negatives?
suffering. I see suffering, and to me, if I was God, I would argue, and God is meant to be kind. Is that correct?
And just.
It's just.
And wise.
But is a child being born with a disease who is suffering from birth, is that just? I would argue that is not just. A child being born without any decision making,
Okay, let's think about this.
ever making any more
Let's think
decision,
about it.
is in suffering. I would say that's not just.
So your
no
reason-
one should suffer without reason, without cause or justice.
Right.
That is what justice is. Justice is an act and a consequence of that act. That is not the case for a child born with a disease.
Sure.
That is not the case for someone starving.
So let's deal with one by one, right? Okay. Let's deal with the first thing, child suffering. Give me an example of this suffering. What is the child suffering from? Cancer?
I don't
child
think a
suffering
child
from-
can be born with cancer, but I could be born. There are children born with severe disabilities.
Fine, disabilities. Do you know that many of the things could be because of what we do as parents? What we have done to our environment? Why we have done all this external stimulus all around us, and then they make the baby deform in our womb?
Do you have a family? Do you have a family?
Firstly-
I'm responding to your question. So I'm asking you, do you have a family?
I have a family, but
Okay.
let me move on.
If you did something wrong, say you came up and slapped me, yeah, that I would agree that's wrong, yeah. And instead of you suffering, your children suffered. That's not just. You should feel the consequences of your action, not your children.
Let's take that
That's
one
not just.
It's not just in your thinking, perhaps. I'll tell you why the thinking is quite out of place. When we know that if someone drinks alcohol in large quantities while she is pregnant, we know the child's going to develop fetal alcoholic syndrome.
That is correct.
Yeah, we know that.
That's correct.
So then you're saying this woman, the mother, the pregnant woman, should suffer, not the baby. But we know that the consequence is going to pass on to the baby.
But that is wrong. That is not
Oh,
just.
wait. You can't just say, oh, because the child suffers, the child is made to suffer because of the actions of someone else. For
Does that
example,
sound just?
Does
a child suffering because of someone else's actions without any consent? The child does not consent. The child has no decision in that. The child did not say, "Mother, can you drink alcohol?" No, because it was in the womb.
Just relax.
Why is a child being punished like that? Why is a child being treated in such an awful manner because of another person's actions? That is not just. Justice
Did you
is-
consent to global warming? Did you consent to air pollution, water pollution? Did you consent to all these harmful X-rays and rays that's coming and causing you cancer? Did you consent to any of that?
Firstly,
For example, here.
Are you going to let me respond to your question?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Did you consent to
I
any
would
of that?
firstly say, regarding climate change and anthropogenic climate change, I am part of that.
Did you consent to it?
Yes, because by being part of that, by getting on the train today, I contributed to greater greenhouse gas emissions.
Nope.
By me, yes, I did. By
What
wearing
is
these
what is
clothes,
consent?
I purchased these
Let's
clothes
understand
brand new,
from the
and
very
therefore
root
I contributed
what
to
is
greenhouse gas emissions.
what is consent?
By using oil, I contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. I am consenting
What
because I
is-
am part of that action.
what is consent?
When it comes to cancer, I'm not consenting
Sorry,
to that.
sorry.
I'm not consenting to cancer, but I don't have a choice because I live as in a...
Look at that. I don't have a choice. That's the
don't have a
difference
choice.
between consent and not having a choice.
But no one here
You
thinks
got-
cancer
you
is
got it,
just.
finally.
No one here...
Sorry.
Okay, anyone watching, who thinks cancer
Wait,
is
wait.
just? No one thinks cancer is just.
Do you know what you're doing?
Because
You're shifting the
You
discussion.
asked me- you
Instead
asked
of
me,
now
is
talking
cancer
about
just?
consent,
It is not
you're now
just.
going to justice. Let's understand consent first. All of the things that you mentioned, ultimately what you're admitting now, I had no choice. I am being forced to live in a system like that. So you did not consent to it, you forced onto it.
I did not consent to the ability for me to get cancer. But here's
Sorry,
the thing.
sorry.
I was born
I'm not
as an
talking about
organic
cancer.
Organism. I was born as an
I don't
organic
see
organism
why-
and that's how
Look.
evolution is real.
Look.
Because it doesn't work very well. It works
The
reasonably
harmful-
well, but we have issues
The
with it because
harmful
it's come from different
rays
things.
that comes from the sun or from our universe up
But I'm
there.
not saying that's just. I'm saying that is not just.
Sorry. You can't just make it into a just thing only without looking at the system. So now you have ozone layer being hole created in it and
By
harmful.
human action.
It's the humans doing it, of course. Did you consent to that? Did I consent to it? No, I didn't. I was forced into it. I had
But
no.
collectively we
Sorry,
did.
sorry,
That collective
sorry.
action of using
Sorry,
aerosols-
now you are now totally changing the meaning of the word consent. So now, for example, if a woman is raped because man overpowered her and she had no choice,
That's not the case.
excuse me, let's understand consent. If a woman is being raped by various pervert individuals and they overpower her and she has no choice into that because she's been forced, Is that her passive consent to this?
That's not consent.
Is this a passive
She is
consent?
not consenting.
Is this a passive consent? Not an active one. Is this a passive
No, it's
consent?
not.
Good. So if I am being bombarded with all this harmful rays and pollutions all over, am I consenting to this?
Okay, so
Or am I being forced into it?
when we think of consent,
Do I have a choice or am I consenting?
can I talk?
That's the whole idea.
Okay. When we consider consent, it generally involves multiple people who have the ability to make decisions. We do not consider consent in the circumstances where people don't have the decision process. They don't have control over that. There is no responsibility. When we have consent, there is responsibility and there are consequences to our actions. That is what consent is. That's what we're involving when it comes to consenting. Yeah? So, whereas someone can consent to sex, we don't consent to a catastrophic climate event. We don't consent to that. However,
So you agree with me?
collectively, for certain catastrophic events, collectively, we have knowingly contributed to that. That is just how the
It's
world
a huge
works.
difference between knowingly being part of the system and actively consenting it.
Sorry, I've got to take a phone call. It just keeps coming through.
You have to be a little bit away if you're going to speak because all cameras going to... Yeah, that's
okay.
fine. Right. So, what we're saying is, we haven't consented for any of this. We had no choice. The baby didn't consent to it. If the baby had the power to consent, I'm sure the baby will say, don't drink alcohol, mum, because it's going to harm me.
I agree.
But the
The
baby
baby isn't consenting.
isn't consenting because
100%,
firstly...
we're in agreement. The
Yeah.
baby does
So
not consent.
don't bring now the whole thing about the baby is suffering.
The baby's not consenting to that. That is correct.
Right.
What
But
I
the
was
baby
saying
is
was
suffering
a
because of
just
what?
System, something that is just is where you do an action and the consequences of your action are felt upon yourself. That is a just system, yeah?
Exactly.
Where you consent, you're consenting to something. I say, if I'm going to go up to someone and swear in their face, I am consenting to their response, whatever that be, because I've taken that action and I'm responsible for whatever they do.
You love
because
to
I've
read.
caused that reaction. A baby has not done that.
Sure.
A baby who was born to a mother had no control over that.
That's what we're saying.
And that is not just. Would a God,
wait.
somebody who's kind,
Just.
somebody who's compassionate, would they create a system where somebody who has no choice, who has no ability to consent, who has no responsibility for their action, should feel a serious consequence of
Let's go back to the
action?
system.
I would say no, that is not a just system.
Okay, let's understand
That's an
justice.
unfair
Let's understand
system.
justice. If there is no unjust action, would you understand what just is? If there is no suffering and pain and evil, would you know what good and happiness and bliss and enjoyment is? Would
Is
you?
God all powerful?
Sorry. Don't
Is-
now jump to
No,
justice
to
to
answer
all
your
powerful.
question, to answer your question,
No.
You asked me, do I need relativity to know something?
Firstly, if there was no darkness whatsoever, would you know what light is? Would you even appreciate what light is? Would you? If there was no pain whatsoever, would you even appreciate what happiness and joy is? Would you?
Can you let me respond without interrupting? Okay.
Or if you only respond to the question that I ask?
And to do that, I need to ask you another question.
No. You answer the way you like rather than asking me another
Okay,
question.
alright, then that's fair enough. Okay, what I would say is, we have this system. This is a natural system that it has lots of issues with it. If a God existed, he would, and a God is all powerful. I would argue that if I believed in a God, and I believe this, I could be wrong here, but is Islamic God, is he all powerful? I think he is. And therefore, if he is all powerful, if he can do whatever he wants, or I'm assuming his gender there, if they can do whatever they want, then I'm sure they could create a system where you do not need relativity to understand something. I don't think it's a big deal. But we live in this system, and therefore...
You've answered your own question. Perhaps you haven't realized this. If a creator is all powerful, is the creator able to create with his wisdom systems where people have this relativity to understand and appreciate more?
We do not need to suffer.
No, it's not. You don't need to
God
suffer.
should be able to. If he's all powerful, he should be able to.
The creator
create a
doesn't
universe
want you to
where
suffer.
Suffering doesn't exist.
No.
I'm sorry, but that's simply the fact.
No.
But here's the thing: because we live in a natural universe that is not created by some individual, because it's a reaction and over time, over millennium, little things have big impacts.
Do you want
we have
the
this weird
creator?
system which doesn't always
Okay,
work.
let
This is
me-
why
let
we
me
have
give you-
tailbones.
let me
we
give you-
have tailbones because we evolved from a monkey with a tail.
Oh, now
That's
you're
why
bringing
we have a
evolution
tailbone,
in.
because it doesn't work. If there was a God, he would have created a system where we wouldn't have tailbones. and therefore we wouldn't have issues.
Now you're
That's why we
resorting
wouldn't have
to
appendicitis, because
evolution.
We need an appendix. We don't use an appendix. An appendix is a leftover from an evolutionary forefather of us. If
You know why?
If a God
Do you
was
know-
created
do you know why I'm surprised?
Appendix.
I work in a hospital.
Okay, that's cool.
Right? Do you know what an appendix does to our body?
There is
You just made a statement. It's a vestigial organ. Now that was the
has
belief.
No role.
That was the
It
belief.
has no role.
That was the belief about vestigial organs.
Yep.
Like in the Middle Ages. That how far? I'm not saying Middle Ages in the 14th century. In the early 19th century, they had a list of vestigial organs.
Okay, yeah.
I encourage strongly to everyone who's listening to go and research about vestigial organs, starting from the very first list that was created or generated in the early 19th century, and look at the list. Is the list of vestigial organs means redundant organs in your body, the organs or things in your body that has no purpose. We call them leftover of evolutionary byproducts or whatever, right? Search and do research. Are these lists getting bigger and bigger, like the more and more part of our body is useless, or it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller? One thing I can tell you right now, the list is getting smaller and smaller. Why? Because as our science and technology develops, we learn more and more about the function of those things. Appendix was once considered to be a vestigial organ, once considered by our scientists who believed in evolution. But the same scientists will now say, of course, appendix has a major role to play. I am not going to tell you what role is because I want you to do the homework. When I first checked decades ago, so it wasn't actually new information, decades ago, in Scientific American, Ask the Experts, because I used to read Scientific American. There's two science magazine I used to read during university years. New Scientist and Scientific American. Scientific American had asked the experts, and there someone did pose that question. What is the role of the appendix? More than 2 professional scientists in their field answered that question. What role the appendix plays. So today, you would not find, as far as I know, a biology textbook which has this myth, appendix has no role to play. Right. So this is your answer to about vestigial organs. Coming back, look, in Islam, Allah tells us that ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر. The corruption has occurred in the land and the sea. Why? Because what their hands have earned. So Allah can, make them feel some of their own chastisement, what they have done with their own hands. Also Allah says that He will test people with something of fear, hunger, loss of life, loss of property, and so on and so forth. So this is part of the wisdom of God creating this life. This life, God that we believe in, a just God, did not create this as paradise, in which there is no suffering. Yes, I can see. I can see. I know, but I want to quickly answer this. You can go there. I'm not going to take minutes of this, maybe a few minutes. This life is not life utopia created by God. It is a transitionary period in which we will be tested in what we believe and what we do.
I understand your position.
And
the thing is,
when we end up in a destination, there will be a place of happiness when there will be no suffering. So God created for this wisdom from God. God has created this
to understand the good and the bad.
Do you know why there's good and the bad? But at least this point, we have been given freedom of choice, free will. Free will means some people will use it wisely and some people would not.
100%.
Those who would not, they will create suffering. They will do evil. If they were unable to do evil, then they have no free will. Because of the provision of free will, their suffering does exist.
I do understand your position, and I'll be honest, I have heard it before, and I understand the logic of relativity. I would disagree with that, but obviously I've got to go. But what I think we both share is the fact that we both agreed earlier that we should try and live our lives respecting others, reducing the suffering that our lives have on others. And I think whether you're Islamic, whether you're vegan, or whether you're even Christian or whatever, as long as
not just animal life, right? Human life too.
I consider us all animals, so I agree. As long as we respect
people in Palestine,
else,
people in China, people in
100%.
Kashmir, wherever people are suffering, irrespective of their language, of their color, of their race, of their religion.
We all feel we all feel. We are all individuals who feel emotions, who feel pain, and we all deserve respect for that